To discuss this issue a little more in detail, we have Asian geopolitical columnist and expert Liam Gibson, based out of Taiwan. Liam, many thanks for joining us here on World Today. My first question to you is, how do you think an IPEF, that is the IPEF, will fare with 12 countries coming together in this loose grouping to counter China, which has more strength and a stronger, more resilient economic bloc?
There is still a lot of work to be done. It's very early days, and we're only seeing the very humble beginnings of this multilateral economic project. As you said, it is a loose grouping, and like other loose groupings meant to counter China, like, say, the Quad, for instance, it will ebb and flow before finding its feet and really starting to gain strategic weight. So this brings us to the question, what is the IPEF or IPEF exactly? I mean, well, we first need to understand what it is not. IPEF is not a free trade agreement. It is not designed to lower tariffs. Instead, it is more of a norm-shaping mechanism that the US hopes to leverage to build regional consensus on strategic issues such as supply chain resilience, intellectual property, and the digital economy, and a host of other important areas. So, it seeks the benefits of trade partnerships, but it also seeks to insulate Americans from the downsides of trade liberalization. So the US wants to get back influence in the region over China without really exposing its domestic workers to the pains of free trade agreements. So this sounds like a good idea in theory, but will it really work in reality, Geeta? It's kind of a bit too soon to tell. We're finally getting a sense of what IPEF might become, but it's very early days. And so I think the US should actually be doing this in tandem with the CPTPP, of course, which is the most comprehensive and the deepest and most high quality trade agreement in the region right now.
Right, but Liam, many thinkers, political analysts, strategic experts now believe that this is only the second Quad summit and that it was done in a rushed manner. Do you think this is a desperate move by Biden to cater to his own domestic audience, because US is suffering from very high inflation and food prices? Is that one of the reasons why Biden has made this move?
Well, Geeta, I don't think IPEF really caters to the domestic audience so much, since that most American voters, I would say, are probably keeping their eyes more on prices at the pump and rising costs of living than the specific details of free trade agreements or economic partnerships on the other side of the world. So I'm not so sure that's really the target audience for this particular economic framework. Now, we know the Biden administration came in saying that it would first prioritize building back better the American economy at home, reviving the economy after the pandemic, and investing in infrastructure and jobs, etc. And it's done that. To its credit, it has really prioritized taking care of the American economy. However, of course, that kind of comes at a cost to those of us waiting in Asia. Asia's been waiting. It's been almost 18 months since Biden took office, and we're only now just starting to get an outline of what IPEF could be. It's a little late, coming to the party, as it were, and of course, the foreign policy establishment in Washington will be pleased to get this up and away. But as I said earlier, the US really needs to build more and bring more to the table for countries in the region if it's going to leverage the size of its economy and get back some of that influence from China. So, who is IPEF for in terms of the players in the US that are really probably lobbying for this and want to see this project get up and underway? It's probably the foreign policy establishment, of course. However, I think, as I said earlier, if the US is not prepared to join a free trade agreement or rejoin the CPTPP, then they'll need to get a lot more involved in making this IPEF much more substantial if it is going to have any chance of trying to rebalance the region and try to win back some of that leverage from China.
Finally, not as a new entrant, but as someone who is new to the entire Quad meet, which is the new Prime Minister in Australia. Now, do you see dynamics changing with China from the harsh rhetoric of Scott Morrison to a softer, more diplomatic approach by the new Premier of Australia?
Thank you, Geeta. That's a great question. In terms of rhetoric, yes, it will probably be a little less harsh, but I would still say firm. Okay, that's probably the change in tone we're seeing from new Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. However, I don't see a softer approach toward China coming out of Canberra. At least the Prime Minister is very practical and very clear-sighted about where the ball is, metaphorically, in terms of this court. The ball is in China's court. Of course, China changed its ways. It changed its behavior and its treatment of Australia. And so, the new Prime Minister has already said there's no justification for Beijing's unilateral trade barriers and unofficial tariffs on Australian products. And so it's up to Beijing to correct those and to change those illegal tariffs and to fix the relationship with Australia, not the other way around. So I would say you're going to probably see more practical diplomacy from Australia, but I don't see Anthony Albanese simply giving in or succumbing to sort of Beijing's demands without some sort of compromise from China. China needs to realize that the Australian public is not happy with the way it's conducted bilateral relations, and it is not going to be intimidated by that kind of bullying, economic bullying. And Anthony Albanese is very aware of that. And I don't believe he's going to take such a soft approach as to simply give in to Beijing's demands.
Thank you, Liam Gibson, for joining us here on World Today.